My name is Savannah, and I am 32 years old. I consider myself lucky to have escaped a toxic family. My brother Jake was always the golden child who could do no wrong. When he seriously hurt me and I reported it, my family disowned me without hesitation. The shocking part. After 7 years of silence, my father suddenly appeared with an outrageous demand he wants part of my liver. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button as I share how I found strength after betrayal. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan, with what looked like the perfect family from the outside. My father, Thomas, was a renowned surgeon at Detroit Medical Center, respected by colleagues and patients alike for his skilled hands and confident demeanor. My mother, Diana, worked as a financial consultant for wealthy clients managing portfolios worth millions. They provided us with a comfortable life in a spacious colonial house with manicured lawns and a swimming pool in the backyard. Then there was Jake, my brother, who was 5 years younger than me. From the moment he was born, it was clear he held a special place in our family dynamic. He was the son my father always wanted, the boy who would carry on the family name and follow in his medical footsteps. Jake had my father's strong jawline and my mother's bright blue eyes, a perfect genetic combination that made relatives coo over him at family gatherings. The disparities in how we were treated became apparent early on. When I brought home straight A's on my report card in elementary school, I would receive a quick nod and maybe a good job if my parents were in a particularly generous mood. When Jake brought home B's and C's, there would be celebration dinners and excessive praise for his tremendous effort. I still remember my 10th birthday when I asked for a bicycle. My parents said it was too expensive and suggested I save my allowance. 3 months later, on no special occasion, Jake received a top-of-the-line mountain bike because he showed interest in outdoor activities. The injustice burned, but I learned to swallow my protests because they only led to lectures about being jealous of my little brother. As we grew older, the pattern only intensified. Jake could break things around the house, and I would somehow end up being blamed for not watching him carefully enough. When I was 16, I worked part-time jobs for 6 months to save enough for a used Honda with 200,000 miles on it. When Jake turned 16, our parents surprised him with a brand new Ford Mustang complete with custom racing stripes. My academic achievements were treated as expected obligations, while his mediocre performance was praised as exceptional. I graduated as valedictorian of my high school class and received a scholarship to Columbia University. The day of my graduation ceremony, my parents decided not to attend because it conflicted with one of Jake's football games where he mostly sat on the bench. I remember calling my friend Melissa in tears from the empty chairs I had reserved for my family. "They always do this," I sobbed into the phone. "Nothing I do will ever be good enough. Your parents are missing out on knowing an amazing person." She said words that stuck with me through the years that followed. Living under the shadow of the golden child was a lonely experience. I felt invisible in my own home, like a ghost drifting through rooms where only Jake could be seen and heard. During family dinners, conversations revolved around his activities and interests. My accomplishments were footnotes quickly acknowledged before returning to the main attraction of our family narrative, Jake. While this constant dismissal hurt deeply, it also forged something in me that would later become my salvation: independence. I learned to validate my own achievements, to find pride in my work without needing external approval. I built a rich inner life, finding solace in books and developing passions my parents never bothered to notice. When I left for college, the physical distance helped me gain perspective on just how dysfunctional our family dynamic had been. I made friends who valued me, professors who recognized my abilities, and gradually began building a life where I felt seen and appreciated. I studied journalism and communications, discovering a talent for storytelling and investigative reporting that would later shape my career. During those college years, I limited my visits home to major holidays, each return a painful reminder of my outsider status. My bedroom had been converted to a home office within months of my departure, while Jake's room remained pristine even during his extended summer trips with friends. I graduated summa cum laude from Columbia, my thesis on investigative journalism in digital media, earning recognition from industry professionals. My parents did not attend this graduation either, citing the expense of travel, though they had recently taken a 2-week vacation in Italy. I accepted my diploma alone but not lonely, surrounded by friends who had become the family I chose. The irony was not lost on me that the neglect I experienced had made me stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more successful than Jake, who crumbled under the weight of expectations and endless praise. While I was learning to stand on my own, he was being crippled by dependency and entitlement, a reality that would soon become impossible for even my parents to ignore. After college, I secured a position at a prestigious media company in New York, working my way up from assistant to associate producer in just 2 years. My apartment was small, but it was mine, paid for with money I earned. I had created a life that felt authentic and fulfilling, separate from the shadow of my childhood. When Thanksgiving approached during my 3rd year in New York, a strange nostalgia compelled me to accept my mother's perfunctory invitation home. Perhaps distance had softened my perspective, or maybe I simply wanted to show them the capable, confident woman I had become without their support. The moment I walked through the door, I sensed something was off. The house felt tense with forced smiles and awkward conversations. Jake, now 21 and supposedly in his 3rd year at Michigan State, looked nothing like the golden boy in the family photos that still dominated the mantle. He had lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, which darted nervously around the room. His once meticulously styled hair was unwashed and limp. But most concerning was his behavior, jumping at sudden noises, checking his phone obsessively, and disappearing for hours without explanation. During dinner, Jake barely touched his food, but made 4 trips to the liquor cabinet, refilling his glass with whiskey each time. When I raised an eyebrow at my mother, she smiled tightly and changed the subject to her garden club activities. My father launched into a lengthy monologue about a complicated surgery he had performed studiously, avoiding any acknowledgement of Jake's concerning behavior. Later that evening, I found Jake on the back porch, smoking something that definitely was not a cigarette. When he saw me, he hurriedly extinguished it and became immediately defensive. "What are you doing, spying on me?" He snapped, his words slightly slurred. "I am not spying. I came out for some air," I replied calmly. "Jake, is everything okay? You seem different." He laughed bitterly. "Of course Saint Savannah would notice. Always so perfect. Always judging everyone else." "I am not judging you. I am concerned. Are you still in school?" A flash of anger crossed his face. "Mind your own business. Just because your life is so amazing in New York does not mean you can come back here and start analyzing everyone." The conversation ended when he stormed off, but my journalist instincts were on high alert. The next morning, I tried to broach the subject with my mother as she prepared breakfast. "Mom, I am worried about Jake. He does not seem well." She stiffened immediately. "Your brother is fine. He has been under some pressure with school, that is all. He was drinking heavily last night, and I think he was smoking marijuana, possibly something stronger." My mother slammed a pan down on the counter. "This is exactly why he gets upset when you visit. You have always been jealous of the special bond Jake has with us. Now you are trying to make up problems to make him look bad." I was stunned by the accusation. "That is ridiculous. I am genuinely concerned." "If you cannot be supportive of your brother, maybe you should cut your visit short," she suggested coldly. Despite this warning, I could not ignore what I was seeing. While my parents were out the following day, I did something I never thought I would do. I went into Jake's room. The space was chaotic, with clothes strewn everywhere and fast food containers piled on surfaces. But what chilled me was finding a small bag of white powder tucked inside his nightstand drawer, alongside a collection of pills in unmarked containers. When I confronted my parents with what I had found, my father exploded. "How dare you invade his privacy? You have always tried to undermine him because you cannot stand that we love him." "This is not about undermining anyone," I insisted. "Jake needs help. That was cocaine in his drawer, and pills I do not recognize." "Get out of my sight," my father hissed. "You would fabricate anything to hurt your brother. He told us you have always been jealous, and now I see he was right." That evening, Jake cornered me in the hallway, his eyes wild with anger. "You went through my things. You told them about my stuff. You will regret that, Savannah." His threat lingered in the air between us, and for the first time I felt physically afraid of my brother. There was something unhinged in his expression that had never been there before. During the remainder of my stay, I began paying closer attention to Jake's comings and goings. He received multiple phone calls that sent him rushing out of the house at odd hours. His mood swings became more pronounced manic energy, followed by crashes where he would sleep for 14 hours straight. One evening, while my parents attended a hospital fundraiser, I overheard Jake on the phone in his room. His door was ajar, and his voice carried clearly down the hall. "Look, I will have the money by Friday. Okay. The package is bigger this time, premium stuff. We can move it all within a week easy. College kids are desperate for it during finals." My blood ran cold as the implications became clear. Jake was not just using drugs, he was dealing them. And from the sounds of it, not in small quantities. When I heard him mention a drop location and time, I made a decision that would forever alter our family dynamic. I would follow him and gather evidence of what he was doing. The following night, I waited until Jake left the house around 11:30. I followed at a safe distance in my rental car as he drove to an industrial area on the outskirts of Detroit, a neighborhood known for its abandoned warehouses and high crime rate. My heart pounded as I parked on a dimly lit street corner and watched him enter a decrepit building. Fighting every instinct telling me to leave, I approached on foot, staying in the shadows. Through a broken window, I could see Jake meeting with three men whose appearances screamed danger. Tattooed arms, bulges at their waistbands, suggesting weapons, and the hardened expressions of people who operated outside the law. They exchanged packages, and even from my position, I could see the significant amount of cash and what appeared to be several kilos of drugs changing hands. With shaking hands, I used my phone to record video of the transaction, making sure to capture Jake's face clearly as he counted stacks of bills. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath my weight. Everyone inside froze, and one of the men pointed toward the window. I ducked down, but not quickly enough. Jake's voice rang out. "Someone is out there! Check it!" I ran toward my car, but Jake had seen me. He burst through a side door and chased after me, catching up just as I reached the vehicle. His hand grabbed my arm with bruising force. "Savannah, what the hell are you doing here?" His face contorted with rage when he saw my phone in my hand. "Give me that right now." "Jake, you need help," I pleaded. "This is serious. You could go to prison for what you are doing." "Give me the phone," he shouted, trying to wrench it from my grip. I resisted, and his response was immediate and violent. He shoved me hard against the car, my head connecting with the metal frame with a sickening thud. Stars exploded behind my eyes as he pried the phone from my fingers. "You have always tried to ruin everything for me," he snarled, checking my phone to find the video I had taken. "You think you are so much better than me, but you are nothing. Just a jealous, pathetic woman who could never accept that Mom and Dad love me more." He deleted the video and threw my phone to the ground, then grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me violently. "If you tell anyone about this, I swear I will make you regret it. Nobody would believe you anyway. They never have, and they never will." He pushed me again, causing me to stumble and fall to the pavement. The impact scraped my hands and knees raw, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the terror I felt looking up at my brother, a stranger with hatred in his eyes. "Stay away from me and my business," he warned before walking away, leaving me trembling on the ground. I somehow managed to drive back to the house, my body in shock. In the bathroom, I assessed the damage: a swelling lump on the back of my head, bruises forming on my upper arms, scraped palms, and torn jeans with bloodied knees underneath. I cleaned myself up as best I could, knowing my parents would return soon and dreading their reaction. When they walked in and saw my condition, my mother gasped. "What happened to you?" Before I could answer, Jake appeared in the doorway. "She was sneaking around some bad neighborhood spying on me. I found her after she had fallen. Probably would have been mugged or worse if I had not shown up." My father turned to me with fury in his eyes. "What were you thinking? Following your brother. This obsession with proving he is doing something wrong has gone too far. He is dealing drugs. I cried out. I saw him with my own eyes exchanging packages with dangerous-looking men. He attacked me when I tried to record it as evidence. My brother laughed coldly. See what I mean? She is delusional. I was meeting friends from the basketball team at a sports bar. She slipped on the curb when she was skulking around trying to catch me doing something wrong. My mother looked between us, doubt flickering briefly before her expression hardened toward me. Savannah, this has to stop. Your jealousy is becoming dangerous to yourself and to this family. I stared at them in disbelief. You still do not see it. He is lying to you, manipulating you, and you are falling for it, because you cannot bear to think your precious son could do anything wrong. My father stepped toward me, finger pointed accusingly. You will not speak about your brother that way in this house. I think it would be best if you left tomorrow. Clearly, this visit was a mistake. That night, locked in my temporary bedroom, I discovered Jake had stolen my phone's SIM card, leaving me unable to call for help. I heard him moving around the house at odd hours, and every creak of the floorboards near my door sent my heart racing. For the first time in my life, I was afraid to be in my childhood home. The next morning, I found evidence Jake had gone through my luggage. When I checked my wallet, $500 in cash was missing. In my mother's bedroom, I noticed her jewelry box open several valuable pieces conspicuously absent. Yet I knew that reporting this would only result in more accusations against me. I changed my flight and left that afternoon, my parents cold and distant during our goodbye. Jake watched from the doorway, a smug smile playing on his lips as I dragged my suitcase to the waiting taxi. It would be the last time I saw our family home intact. 3 weeks after returning to New York, I received a frantic call from my mother. Jake had been arrested for possession with intent to distribute. The police had found him with substantial quantities of cocaine, methamphetamine, and prescription pills. There was talk of connections to a drug ring responsible for several overdose deaths in the area. You have to help us, she pleaded. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Your father has already contacted our lawyer, but a statement from you saying you never saw Jake with drugs would help his case. I sat in stunned silence before finding my voice. You want me to lie to protect him after you called me delusional when I tried to warn you about exactly this? He is your brother, she insisted, as if that explained and excused everything. Family protects family. Where was that family protection when he assaulted me, when you chose to believe his lies over what was right in front of your eyes? My voice shook with the emotion of years of accumulated hurts. This is not the time for your petty grudges, Savannah. Jake is in real trouble. Yes, he is, trouble of his own making, and I will not perjure myself to save him from consequences he deserves. My mother's voice turned icy. Then you are no daughter of mine. Those words should have hurt more than they did. Instead, they clarified something I had known deep down for years. I had never truly been a daughter to them in any meaningful sense. I had been a placeholder, an afterthought, someone to blame when their golden child showed his flaws. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time it was Jake calling from jail. His voice was desperate pleading. Savannah, you have to help me. These guys I was working with, they are serious people. If I stay in here, they will think I might talk. Are you talking about the men I saw you with that night? Yes, he admitted, finally acknowledging what he had previously denied. They have connections everywhere, even inside here. I need to make bail. Mom and Dad are trying, but the judge set it high because of the quantity they found. So now you admit what you were doing after gaslighting me and having Mom and Dad believe I was making it all up. There was a pause before he spoke again, his voice lower, threatening. Listen to me carefully. If I go down for this, I am not going alone. Remember that accident when you were 16? The one where you crashed Dad's car and I took the blame. I have proof it was you, and I will tell them everything if you do not help me now. I almost laughed at the absurdity of his threat. Jake, I never crashed Dad's car. That was you driving drunk after a party. You convinced them I had taken the keys without permission. Try again. His voice turned vicious. Fine. How about I tell the police you were my partner that you helped me distribute on college campuses in New York? It would be your word against mine, and I have friends who would back me up for the right price. Go ahead, I said calmly. I have colleagues who can vouch for my whereabouts for every day of the past 3 years. Plus, a clean record and drug tests from my workplace. You have nothing." He was silent for a moment. Then in a voice I barely recognized, "You always thought you were better than me. Always so perfect. So righteous. You have no idea what it is like living up to what they expect from me." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the complex emotion that had always defined our relationship, pity, mixed with frustration. "You never had to live up to anything, Jake. They loved you unconditionally while demanding perfection from me. The difference is I built my life anyway, and you let yourself become this." The call ended abruptly, and I knew it would be our last conversation for a long time. That weekend, I received a call from a Detroit detective asking for my statement about Jake's activities. With a heavy heart but clear conscience, I told them everything I had witnessed: the assault, the drug deal, the missing jewelry from our parents' home. The detective listened carefully, asking clarifying questions. At the end, he thanked me for my honesty. "Your statement corroborates what we have suspected for some time," he explained. "Your brother has been on our radar as part of a larger operation. The information you have provided helps connect several dots." 2 days later, my father called, his voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "What have you done? The prosecutor is using your statement to argue against bail. They are talking about 8 to 10 years now." "I told the truth," I said simply. "Something this family has avoided for far too long." "We are your family," he shouted. "You have betrayed your own blood." "No," I replied firmly. "Jake betrayed me when he assaulted me. You and Mom betrayed me when you chose to believe his lies over what was right in front of you. I owe none of you my silence." His next words cut through the phone like ice. "You are dead to us, Savannah. Do not contact us again. Do not come to the house. As far as we are concerned, we have no daughter." The finality in his voice should have devastated me, but instead, I felt an odd sense of liberation. The ties that had bound me to years of emotional abuse had been severed not by my hand, but by theirs. They had given me the freedom I had never been able to grant myself. The following day, Jake was denied bail. A week later, he was charged with multiple felony counts related to drug trafficking. My parents hired one of the most expensive criminal defense attorneys in Michigan for him, while simultaneously sending me a certified letter formally disinheriting me and demanding I cease using their family name professionally. The final betrayal came when I received a bill from the hospital where I had gone for treatment after returning to New York, still suffering from headaches following the assault. My health insurance, which had been under my father's premium plan through the hospital, had been terminated without notice. They had cut me off completely, leaving me with thousands in medical bills for injuries their son had inflicted. The months that followed my family's rejection were among the hardest of my life. Physically, I was recovering from the concussion and other injuries Jake had inflicted. Emotionally, I was processing the finality of being cut off from my family, dysfunctional as they were. My friend Amy, a fellow journalist I had met during my first year in New York, offered me her spare room when she learned about my situation. "Just until you get back on your feet," she insisted, brushing aside my protests. "That is what friends do for each other." It was a concept so foreign to my experience of family relationships that it left me momentarily speechless. In my world, support had always come with conditions, with expectations of repayment or loyalty that bordered on blind obedience. Amy's simple kindness, offered without expectation of return, was a revelation. My employer granted me a short leave of absence to deal with the physical and emotional aftermath. When I returned to work, I threw myself into my projects with renewed focus, finding that immersing myself in other people's stories helped distance me from the pain of my own. After 3 months of couch surfing at Amy's place, I found an affordable apartment in Brooklyn with a roommate, a kindergarten teacher named Lisa, who worked long hours and respected my privacy. We developed an easy friendship based on mutual respect and the shared experience of complicated family histories. 6 months after the disowning, I began seeing a therapist specializing in family trauma. Dr. Winters helped me understand that what I had experienced throughout my childhood was emotional neglect, and that the family dynamic had been fundamentally unhealthy. What you are describing is the golden child and scapegoat dynamic. she explained during one session. It is common in dysfunctional families where parents are unable to process their own emotions in healthy ways. The golden child can do no wrong and receives all the praise while the scapegoat bears the blame for everything negative in the family system. But why me? I asked the question that had haunted me for years. What did I do to deserve being cast in that role? Nothing, she said firmly. Absolutely nothing. These roles are assigned based on the parent's psychological needs, not on anything you did or did not do. Your brother was not chosen as the golden child because he was better, and you were not chosen as the scapegoat because you were worse. The roles could easily have been reversed if your parents' needs had been different. Those sessions were painful, but illuminating, helping me understand that the rejection I had experienced was not a reflection of my worth, but a manifestation of my parents' limitations. I began to see my independence not as something I had been forced into, but as a strength I had developed despite challenging circumstances. At work, I was assigned to a major investigative piece about pharmaceutical companies' role in the opioid crisis. The project introduced me to James, a data journalist whose methodical approach complemented my more intuitive reporting style. We worked closely for 3 months, often staying late to analyze documents and connect scattered pieces of evidence. James became first a trusted colleague, then a friend, and eventually, something more. Unlike previous relationships where I had kept parts of myself hidden, afraid of rejection, if I revealed too much with James, I found myself able to share the complex truth of my family history. His response was not pity, but understanding and admiration for the resilience I had shown. "You built yourself from scratch," he said one evening as we walked through Central Park. "That takes incredible strength." While rebuilding my personal life, I kept track of Jake's case through news reports and occasional updates from a journalist friend in Detroit. He had ultimately accepted a plea deal, receiving an 8-year sentence for drug trafficking and assault charges. My parents had spent a small fortune on his defense and reportedly mortgaged their house to cover legal fees. I had recurring nightmares about the night Jake attacked me, waking up in cold sweats with phantom pain where his hands had gripped my arms. But over time, with therapy and the support of genuine friendships, those nightmares became less frequent. I was healing slowly but surely. 2 years after being disowned, I was promoted to senior producer at my media company. 3 years after James and I moved in together, finding a small but comfortable apartment in a neighborhood we both loved. 4 years after we were married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by friends who had become the family we chose. 5 years after we bought our first home, a brownstone in need of renovation, but with good bones and character, much like the life we were building together. Throughout these years, there were moments when the absence of my biological family felt acute. Holidays, my wedding day, the milestones that society tells us should be shared with parents and siblings. But I had learned to acknowledge the grief of those absences without allowing them to overshadow the joy of the present. 7 years after my family cut ties with me, I discovered I was pregnant. James and I had been trying for almost a year, and the positive test brought a whirlwind of emotions: joy, anticipation, and a renewed reckoning with my family history. I was determined that any child of mine would grow up knowing they were loved unconditionally, valued for who they were, rather than what they achieved or how well they conformed to expectations. Our child will never question their place in our hearts. I promised James as we prepared the nursery, painting the walls a sunny yellow that reminded me of hope. I was 7 months pregnant, my body transformed by the life growing inside me, when the past I thought I had left behind came calling once again. It was a Tuesday afternoon in May when my phone rang, displaying an unknown Michigan number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Savannah." The voice was instantly recognizable despite the years since I had heard it, my mother sounding older and uncharacteristically hesitant. "Yes," I replied, my free hand instinctively moving to protect my pregnant belly. "What do you want?" There was a pause then. "It is your father. He is sick, very sick. Liver failure, end stage. The doctors say he needs a transplant soon, or he will not survive." The news landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples of conflicting emotions. Despite everything, there was a momentary pang of empathy for the man who had raised me, however imperfectly. But stronger was the wariness, the protective instinct that had developed during years of emotional manipulation. "I am sorry to hear that," I said carefully, "but I do not understand why you are calling me after all this time." My mother's voice tightened. "Jake was released last year. Good behavior. We had him tested immediately, but he is not a match for the transplant. The doctors suggested immediate family members would be the best option, and well, you are the only other immediate family." The realization of why she had reached out after 7 years of silence hit me with stunning clarity. "You want my liver, after disowning me, cutting me off completely, and telling me I was dead to you. This is not about the past, Savannah. This is about saving your father's life. You could donate a portion of your liver. The doctors say the donor's liver regenerates within months." I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Not about the past, you cannot be serious. You threw me away like garbage because I told the truth about your precious son, and now you want me to undergo major surgery to save the man who said I was no longer his daughter. He is still your father regardless of what was said in anger." Her tone turned pleading. "At least get tested to see if you are compatible. You do not have to decide right away about the donation." I looked down at my rounded belly. "I am 7 months pregnant. Did you even know that? Did you know I got married 3 years ago? Or that I was promoted twice at work? No, because you chose not to be part of my life. And now you expect me to risk my health and my baby's health for someone who has shown me nothing but conditional love at best and outright rejection at worst." She was quiet for a moment. "We should talk in person. Your father would like to see you. Jake, too." Jake. The name sent a chill through me. The brother who physically assaulted me, who threatened me, who could have caused me to lose this baby before I even knew I was pregnant, that Jake. "He has changed," my mother insisted. "The time in prison gave him perspective. He is sober now, working in your father's office doing administrative work." I closed my eyes, centering myself before responding. "I will meet with you, but not at your house and not alone. A public place, and my husband will be with me." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between New York and Detroit in Pittsburgh. James insisted on driving, concerned about my comfort during the long car ride in my pregnant state. Throughout the journey, I vacillated between anxiety about the upcoming confrontation and a strange curiosity about seeing my family after so many years. The coffee shop was crowded when we arrived, which provided some comfort. Whatever scene might unfold, there would be witnesses. James squeezed my hand reassuringly as my parents and Jake walked through the door. The years had not been kind to any of them. My father, once robust and commanding, looked gaunt and jaundiced, moving slowly with the aid of a cane. My mother's hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines had etched themselves around her mouth and eyes. Jake, now in his early 30s, had the hardened look of someone who had seen the darker side of life. His once handsome features were marred by the telltale signs of long-term drug use, pockmarked skin, premature aging, and a certain hollow quality to his eyes despite his claimed sobriety. They sat across from us, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us before my father spoke. "You look well," he said stiffly, his gaze flickering to my pregnant belly before returning to my face. "I am well," I replied. "This is my husband, James." James nodded politely, but maintained a protective posture beside me. No one offered to shake hands. My mother tried for warmth. "We are happy to see you doing so. Prosperous. When is the baby due?" "August," I said, not elaborating. "Mom said Dad needs a liver transplant." My father straightened slightly, his doctor's demeanor asserting itself. "Yes. Primary sclerosing cholangitis complicated by years of undiagnosed hepatitis C. Likely contracted during surgical work before universal precautions were standard. My MELD score is 28, which puts me high on the transplant list, but finding a matched donor is proving difficult." I nodded, processing the information. "And Jake is not a match." Jake spoke for the first time, his voice rougher than I remembered. "No. Wrong blood type plus some other factors. The doctors tested me thoroughly." "So I am your last resort," I stated bluntly. My father's face hardened. "I would not put it that way. You are family regardless of past disagreements. Family helps family in times of need. Past disagreements? I repeated incredulously. Is that what you call disowning me? Cutting off my health insurance while I was being treated for injuries your son inflicted, sending me legal notices forbidding me from using your name professionally. We were angry, my mother interjected. People say things they do not mean when they are upset. For 7 years, I challenged. You have had 7 years to reach out to apologize to try to make amends. The only reason you are sitting here now is because you need something from me that only I can provide. Jake leaned forward. Look, Savannah, we all made mistakes. I was messed up back then doing things I never should have done. The drugs made me someone I am not. The drugs did not make you gaslight me my entire life, I countered. They did not make Mom and Dad favor you from the day you were born or dismiss every accomplishment I ever had while celebrating your most basic achievements. My father's face reddened. We did the best we could as parents. If you felt slighted, that was your perception, not reality. Still gaslighting. I noted my hand protectively over my belly again. Still unable to acknowledge that your treatment of me was fundamentally unfair and damaging. Is that what you want? He demanded, voice rising slightly. An apology. Fine, I am sorry if you felt we were not supportive enough. Now will you get tested for compatibility? I stared at him, taking in the non-apology that placed the blame on my feelings rather than their actions. That is not how this works. You do not get to dismiss decades of emotional abuse and neglect with a half-hearted apology delivered only because you need part of my body. James placed a steadying hand on my shoulder as my father's expression darkened. You should be grateful we gave you the opportunities you had, he said coldly. The expensive education, the comfortable home. Many people have it much worse. And there it is, I said quietly. The true feeling behind the facade. You still believe I owe you something for doing the basic duties of a parent. That I should be eternally grateful for being given what most children receive. Freely support education shelter. My mother reached across the table trying to take my hand. I pulled back. Savannah, please. Your father is dying. Whatever happened in the past, can we not move beyond it for the sake of his life? I looked at each of them in turn, my father defiant even in his illness, my mother desperate but still unwilling to truly acknowledge the harm done, Jake performing contrition but with that familiar calculating look in his eyes. They had not changed, not really. They had simply been brought to a place where they needed something only I could provide. I will think about getting tested, I said finally, but I make no promises about donation regardless of compatibility. I need to consider my health and my baby's well-being first. It was the most I could offer and more than they deserved. We parted with awkward goodbyes and promises to be in touch. Promises I was not sure I intended to keep. On the drive home, James was quiet until I broke the silence. What are you thinking? I am thinking they have not earned the right to ask you for anything, let alone part of your body, he said honestly. But I also know this is your decision, and I will support whatever you choose. I leaned my head against the window, watching the landscape blur past. They have not changed at all. They still see me as a resource to be used, not as a person with my own needs and feelings. I noticed, James agreed. Your father did not once ask about your life, your work, our marriage, or the baby. It was all about what he needed from you. The observation crystallized something I had felt during the entire encounter. This was not a reconciliation. It was a transaction. They had not sought me out because they regretted their treatment of me or missed my presence in their lives. They had reached out because my body contained something they wanted. 2 days after our meeting, my mother texted me the contact information for my father's transplant team. 3 days after Jake called, leaving a voicemail about how much it would mean to him if I stepped up for the family. 4 days after my father himself called, his tone businesslike as he explained the procedure and recovery process as though my participation was already decided. None of them asked about my pregnancy. None acknowledged the years of silence or their role in creating it. None seemed to recognize that what they were asking involved significant risk to my health and potentially to my unborn child. After consulting with my own obstetrician, I learned that organ donation during pregnancy was strongly discouraged due to risks, including premature labor complications from anesthesia and potential long-term health impacts that could affect my ability to care for my newborn. Even after delivery, we generally recommend waiting at least a year before considering organ donation, my doctor explained gently. Your body needs time to fully recover from pregnancy and childbirth. When I shared this information with my mother, her response was immediate and telling. Can your doctor speak with your father's transplant team? Maybe they can find a way to make it work sooner. Her willingness to potentially risk her grandchild's health for her husband's benefit confirmed what I already knew in their value system. I, and by extension my baby, would always come second to the needs of the men in the family. The situation escalated when my parents unexpectedly showed up at our home one Sunday afternoon. James answered the door while I was resting upstairs. Savannah needs to stop avoiding this decision. I heard my father's voice drift up the stairs. Time is running out for me. James's reply was measured but firm. She is not avoiding anything. She is prioritizing the health of your grandchild, which is what you should be doing too if you truly care about family. I came downstairs to find my father leaning heavily on his cane in our living room, my mother beside him and Jake lurking near the doorway. The sight of Jake in my home, the safe space I had created, sent a wave of anxiety through me. You should have called before coming, I said, one hand automatically moving to my belly. You have been ignoring our calls, my father countered. I told you I would think about it, and I have. My doctor strongly advises against donation during pregnancy or for at least a year afterward. My father scoffed. Get a second opinion. Doctors are often overly cautious. I am going with my doctor's recommendation, I stated firmly. The health of my baby comes first. So you will let me die, he demanded, voice rising. There are other options, I reminded him. The transplant lists living donors who are not currently pregnant. Jake stepped forward, his expression darkening. After everything they did for you, this is how you repay them, by refusing to help when Dad needs you. James moved to stand between me and Jake, his posture protective. I think you all need to leave now. Savannah has made her decision and it is medically sound. Stressing out a pregnant woman is not helping anyone. This is not over, my father warned as they reluctantly moved toward the door. Family has obligations to each other. Funny how those obligations only seem to run in one direction, I observed quietly. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking with a mixture of anger and residual fear. They will never change, I told James. To them, I will always be a resource, never a person. The following weeks brought escalating pressure. My parents began calling my workplace. Jake posted thinly veiled accusations on social media, painting me as the heartless daughter refusing to save her dying father. Distant relatives I had not spoken to in years reached out with guilt-inducing messages. When a colleague mentioned seeing a post about me, I realized the situation had spun beyond private family drama. I contacted a lawyer who sent cease and desist letters regarding the defamatory social media posts. I changed my phone number and email address. I alerted building security about potential unwanted visitors. Through all of this, I maintained my resolve. The family that had discarded me so easily had no right to demand sacrifice from me now, especially not one that could endanger my child. The guilt they tried to instill found no purchase against the protective instinct of motherhood and the strength I had built during years of healing. 2 months after my family's sudden reappearance in my life, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl we named Lily. The moment the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt a love so pure and unconditional it brought tears to my eyes. Looking into her perfect face, I made a silent promise that she would never know the pain of conditional love, of feeling less than of having to earn her place in our hearts. James was by my side throughout the delivery, his steady presence a reminder of what true partnership looked like. In the days that followed, as we adjusted to life with a newborn, I found myself reflecting on the stark contrast between the family I had been born into and the one I was now creating. My therapist had once told me that becoming a parent offers an opportunity to heal childhood wounds by giving your child what you yourself never received. With each gentle touch, each soothing word, each middle-of-the-night feeding, I was not only nurturing Lily, but also the wounded child I had once been. 3 weeks after Lily's birth, I received an email from my mother through my work account, which she had apparently retained. The message was brief, informing me that my father had been matched with a deceased donor and undergone transplant surgery. He had survived the procedure but was facing a difficult recovery. The email ended with, "He still asks about you. It is not too late to be a family again." I closed the email without responding. The timing was telling. They had found another solution to their medical crisis, and only then did the invitation to reconcile appear. Had I been their only option, I had no doubt the pressure and guilt would have continued unabated. In the months that followed, occasional updates about my father's health arrived, each containing subtle overtures toward reconciliation. I read them, but rarely responded. The birth of Lily had clarified something important. Reconciliation, if it ever happened, would need to be on terms that protected not just me, but also my child, from the dysfunctional patterns that had damaged my own childhood. A year after Lily's birth, I received news that my father had passed away from complications related to the transplant. The email from my mother included details about the funeral and an expression of hope that I would attend. After careful consideration and discussion with James and my therapist, I decided to watch the service via livestream instead of attending in person. Observing from a distance, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief not for the father I had had, but for the one I had deserved, anger that remained unresolved, and a certain peace that came from knowing I had made choices that honored my own well-being and that of my family. In the weeks following the funeral, I found myself thinking more about Jake. Despite everything, he was my only sibling, a connection to my past that no one else shared. I wondered if without our parents' influence reinforcing our dysfunctional roles, there might be possibility for a healthier relationship someday. Not now, perhaps not for many years, but someday. As Lily grew from infant to toddler, bright and curious about the world, I channeled my experiences into something constructive. Drawing on my journalism background, I began volunteering with an organization that supported young adults estranged from their families due to abuse addiction or rejection based on identity. Eventually, this volunteer work evolved into a nonprofit foundation that provided resources, community, and advocacy for family estrangement survivors. We offered emergency housing, legal guidance, therapy, scholarships, and perhaps most importantly, validation that sometimes the healthiest families are the ones we create for ourselves. Through this work, I met hundreds of people with stories that echoed elements of my own. Each one reinforced what I had learned through my journey, that setting boundaries, even painful ones, was sometimes the most loving thing you could do, both for yourself and for those who had harmed you. When Lily was 4, a package arrived at our home. Inside was a handwritten letter from Jake, along with some old family photos I had never seen, including several of me as a child that my parents had apparently kept despite their claims of disowning me completely. The letter was surprisingly honest. Jake acknowledged his role in our dysfunctional family system, the privileges he had enjoyed at my expense, and the harm his actions had caused. He mentioned being 2 years sober and working with a therapist who specialized in family systems. He asked not for forgiveness, which he said he had not earned, but for the possibility of communication at whatever level I felt comfortable with. I considered his letter for several weeks before crafting a careful response. I set clear boundaries. Any relationship would develop slowly with respect for the history between us. He would never have unsupervised contact with Lily, and at the first sign of manipulation or old patterns reemerging, I would cut contact immediately. Our tentative reconnection consisted of occasional emails at first, then video calls every few months. I watched carefully for signs of the old Jake, the golden child who expected the world to bend to his desires, but mostly I saw someone humbled by his experiences and genuinely working to become a better person. 3 years into this careful reconciliation, during one of our video calls, Jake mentioned something that caught my attention. "I have been thinking about Mom," he said. She is still stuck in the same patterns, unable to see her role in what happened to our family. I tried talking to her about it, but she just deflects or changes the subject. It was the first time he had explicitly acknowledged our mother's contribution to the dysfunction, placing responsibility where it partially belonged instead of solely on himself or external factors like drugs. That must be difficult, I replied carefully. It is, he admitted. But it has helped me understand why you needed to keep your distance all these years. I get it now in a way I could not before. That conversation marked a turning point in our healing journey. Not a dramatic reconciliation or tearful reunion, but a quiet acknowledgement of truths long denied. It was enough for now. As for my mother, we maintained minimal contact. She had never fully acknowledged the harm done, never truly apologized without qualification. Our interactions remained cordial but distant, limited to holiday cards and occasional updates about major life events. The family I had been born into had failed me in fundamental ways, but the family I had created thrived on the principles I had learned through that very failure: unconditional love, respect for boundaries, acknowledgement of harm, and commitment to growth. Sometimes the most valuable legacy of a difficult past is the determination to create a different future. My journey from scapegoated daughter to confident woman, loving wife, nurturing mother, and advocate for others had taught me that family is not defined by blood or obligation. It is defined by love that does not demand sacrifice of selfhood, by support that does not come with strings attached, and by the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. In the end, perhaps the most important lesson I learned was this: sometimes the truest form of love is knowing when to let go, and the greatest act of courage is building happiness from the ashes of what was lost. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own well-being, even when others tried to make you feel guilty about it? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember that you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can give others.